I am Melanie, 32 years old, and 8 years ago, my family disowned me completely. Now, unexpectedly, an email sits in my inbox, inviting me to Christmas dinner, as if nothing ever happened. My hands tremble as I stare at the screen, a storm of emotions swirling inside me. The life I built without them feels suddenly fragile against the weight of my past. Despite my successful career and the loving chosen family surrounding me now, that familiar ache resurfaces. If you have ever experienced family estrangement during the holidays, please let me know where you are watching from and subscribe to share this journey with me. Growing up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, our family projected the image of perfection that everyone in our small community admired. My father, Richard, was a respected bank manager. My mother, Sandra, taught Sunday school. My older brother, James, followed perfectly in my father's footsteps. And my younger sister, Kathleen, was the sweet, compliant daughter. Then there was me, always slightly out of step with what they wanted. Our brick colonial house, with its manicured lawn and holiday decorations, was featured twice in the local newspaper as part of the Christmas home tour. From the outside, we were the ideal American family. Inside those walls was a different reality where love came with conditions I could never quite fulfill. The first time I realized something was wrong was during my 5th grade art show. My watercolor painting won first place, and rather than celebration, my father frowned at the abstract design. "Why can't you paint something normal like a landscape or still life?" he asked, while smiling tightly at the other parents. "Drawing attention isn't becoming for a young lady," my mother quickly added. "But we are proud of you, sweetie," while squeezing my shoulder hard enough to leave a mark. That night, I overheard them talking in hushed voices about my concerning creative tendencies and how they needed to guide me toward more practical interests. I learned to hide my sketchbooks and painted only what they approved of when they were watching. High school brought the first serious conflicts. When I questioned why women couldn't hold leadership positions in our church during dinner, my father slammed his fork down so hard the plates jumped. "That kind of feminist nonsense isn't welcome at this table," he said, his face reddening. "Those ideas will lead you straight away from God and family values." James nodded along with every word my father said, while Kathleen stared at her plate. That night, Kathleen slipped into my room with a book she had hidden from our parents. "I thought you might like this," she whispered, handing me a biography of female artists throughout history. The biggest turning point came during my senior year, when I received a scholarship offer to the School of Visual Arts in New York. I was ecstatic but terrified to tell my parents. When I finally gathered the courage over Sunday dinner, my father laughed as if I had told a joke. "Absolutely not," he said. "We already agreed you would attend state college and major in education or business. Art school is for people who don't have proper guidance." My mother added softly, "Honey, we just want what's best for you. New York is so dangerous, and those art types, well, they don't share our values." James chimed in, "Listen to them, Mel. They know what they're talking about." Only Kathleen remained silent, her eyes communicating what she couldn't say aloud. That night, I made my first major decision against their wishes. I accepted the scholarship. When I told them, my father refused to speak to me for 2 weeks. My mother cried and asked what they had done wrong as parents. James called me selfish for hurting the family. Despite their disapproval, I packed my bags that August. Before leaving, Kathleen hugged me tightly and slipped a card into my hand. "I admire your courage," she had written inside. "Please don't forget about me." As I drove away toward a future of my own choosing, I glanced in the rearview mirror at my family standing in the driveway. My father had his arm around my mother, who was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. James stood tall with disapproval etched on his face. Only Kathleen waved a small gesture of support that would become increasingly rare in the years ahead. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning of the rift that would eventually tear us completely apart. College was like breathing fresh air after being underwater. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who valued creativity and independent thinking. My roommate Tara, a photography major from California, became the first person who listened to me without judgment. She introduced me to her friend group, and suddenly, I had people who celebrated my artistic achievements rather than diminishing them. "Your work is incredible," Tara said after seeing my portfolio. "Have you ever considered focusing on graphic design? You have such a strong sense of visual communication." Her casual suggestion sparked something in me. I took an introductory graphic design course the next semester and fell in love with the perfect balance of creativity and practical application. It felt like finding the missing piece of myself. My parents called every Sunday, their voices tight with disapproval as I shared my experiences. "And how are your real classes going?" my father would ask, referring to the general education requirements. When I mentioned changing my concentration to graphic design, the silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "We are not paying for you to waste your time," he finally said, though they weren't paying for anything. My scholarship covered most expenses, and I worked part-time at the campus coffee shop for spending money. "Richard, let's not discuss this now," I heard my mother murmur in the background. During my sophomore year, I met Professor Diana Hamilton, who became the mentor I never had. After class one day, she asked me to stay behind. "Your work shows exceptional promise," she said, "but sometimes I sense you're holding back, like you're afraid to fully express your voice." I broke down and told her about my family situation. Instead of dismissing my concerns, she listened intently. "Many creative people come from families that don't understand them," she said. "But you get to decide who you become, Melanie, not them." With Diana's encouragement, I began submitting work to student shows and publications. When one of my designs won a regional competition that came with a small cash prize and industry recognition, I called home, hoping finally to make them proud. "That's nice, dear," my mother said distractedly. "Did you get the Bible study materials we sent?" I had promptly donated them to the free bookshelf in my dorm. "Yes, thank you," I lied. During the spring semester of my sophomore year, I met Sam at a campus art exhibition. He was studying architecture, and we bonded over our shared love of design. When things became serious, he invited me to spend part of summer break with his family in Connecticut. The contrast between my family and Sam's was stark. His parents, both professors at Yale, asked thoughtful questions about my work and seemed genuinely interested in my answers. His mother, an art historian, engaged me in conversations about design movements and influential women in the field. For the first time, I experienced what supportive family dynamics could look like. When I returned home for the remainder of summer, the differences were painful to acknowledge. During dinner, on my first night back, my father interrogated me about Sam. "What church does his family attend?" he demanded. When I explained they were non-practicing Jews who occasionally attended services for cultural reasons, my father exchanged a concerned look with my mother. "We raised you in a good Christian home," my mother said softly. "Equally yoked is what the Bible teaches us about relationships." James, who was visiting with his new girlfriend Abigail from their church, nodded solemnly. "You should come to the singles group at church while you're home. There are plenty of good appropriate men there." Only Kathleen, now a high school junior, remained silent, watching the familiar dynamic unfold. The tension crescendoed during my junior year when I came home for Christmas. The holiday had always been a major event in our household, with strict traditions and extended family gatherings. This year, I arrived with blue tips in my hair, a small act of self-expression. My mother's face fell when she saw me. "What have you done to yourself? You look alternative. The neighbors will talk." During Christmas dinner, my uncle asked about my studies, genuinely curious. As I enthusiastically explained my latest projects, my father interrupted. "Melanie's just going through a phase with this art business. She'll settle down eventually and find something practical." That night, I confronted him. Why can't you respect my choices? This isn't a phase, it's my passion and future career. His face hardened. As long as we support you, you will respect our guidance. You don't support me, I shot back. My scholarship and job do. The next morning, he called me into his study. We've made a decision, he said. Either you transfer to state college for a proper degree next semester, or we're cutting off what little financial help we do provide. No more health insurance, no more phone plan, nothing. I returned to New York after the holidays with a weight on my shoulders, but determination in my heart. I took out additional student loans, found a second job, and removed myself from their phone plan. When I called to tell them my decision from my new number, my mother cried. Why are you doing this to us? She asked. I'm not doing anything to you, I replied. I'm just living my life. That spring, Sam and I broke up amicably as he prepared for a graduate program in London. Though sad, the split was respectful and mature, another revelation about how relationships should function. By senior year, my visits home had dwindled to just major holidays, each more uncomfortable than the last. But despite the growing distance from my family, I was thriving academically and socially. I had found my people, my passion, and my voice. What I didn't realize was that the final rupture was still to come. Graduation day arrived bright and clear, but I walked across the stage without a single family member in the audience. I told myself it didn't matter, as I smiled for the photographer clutching my diploma in graphic design with honors. My friends cheered loudly enough to fill the gap, and Professor Diana hugged me fiercely afterward. I'm so proud of you, she said, her eyes glistening. Never forget what you've accomplished here. That evening, surrounded by friends and their visiting families at our graduation dinner, I received a call from the Brennan Design Agency in Manhattan. They'd reviewed my portfolio and wanted to offer me a junior designer position starting the following month. The salary was modest, but enough to live on, and the opportunity was exactly what I'd hoped for. Elated, I stepped outside the restaurant to call my parents with what I thought would be news they finally couldn't diminish. My mother answered, and I could hear the familiar sounds of dinner preparation in the background. Mom, I got a job, a real position at a design firm in New York, I said, unable to contain my excitement. There was a pause before she responded, her voice tight. So you're really staying there? I thought after graduation you'd come to your senses and move back home. My heart sank. This is a great opportunity, Mom. Most graduates don't land agency jobs right away. Your father wants to speak with you, she said, and I heard the phone changing hands. Melanie, my father said, his voice controlled. We expected you home next week. We've already spoken to John Peterson at the community college about a teaching position that would be perfect while you figure out your next steps. I gripped the phone tighter. Dad, I just told Mom I have a job here already. A good one in my field. This nonsense has gone on long enough, he replied. 4 years of indulgence is plenty. It's time to come home, join the real world, and stop this artistic rebellion. This isn't a rebellion, I said, my voice rising. This is my career, my life. Well, discuss this when you're home for Sunday dinner next week, he said firmly. We have a family meeting planned. That Sunday, I flew home with a mixture of dread and determination. The familiar drive from the airport to our house felt like traveling back in time, erasing all the growth and independence I'd cultivated. My mother greeted me with a tight hug that felt more possessive than loving. My father nodded curtly from his armchair, not bothering to stand. James and his now fiancée, Abigail, were already seated at the dining table, while Kathleen, now a high school senior, offered me a small smile from the kitchen where she was helping with dinner. The meal began with strained small talk about the neighbors and church events. When my father finally cleared his throat and placed his napkin beside his plate, I knew the real conversation was about to begin. We've given this a lot of thought, he said. You've had your fun playing artist in the big city, but now it's time to rejoin the family and community that raised you. The Peterson Academy position starts in August, giving you time to settle back in. You'll live here until you find your footing. I looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes. I'm not moving back, I said quietly but firmly. I have a job in New York, a career opportunity in the field I studied for. Those people have filled your head with impractical ideas, my mother interjected. New York has changed you, and not for the better. She's right, James added. Every time you visit, you're more distant from our values. This isn't who you were raised to be. I turned to my brother. And who exactly was I raised to be, James? Someone who never questions anything, who follows every rule without understanding why. Someone who respects family and tradition. My father cut in his voice rising. Someone who appreciates the sacrifices we've made and the values we've instilled. I do appreciate what you've given me, I said. But I can't live my life to please you. I need to follow my own path. My father slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. As long as you're part of this family, you'll respect our guidance. The room fell silent as the implicit ultimatum hung in the air. I took a deep breath. Then maybe I shouldn't be part of this family anymore, I said softly. I didn't expect him to take me literally. My father's face turned an alarming shade of red as he stood up. If you choose that sinful city and those godless people over your own blood, then so be it. If you walk out that door to return to New York, you are no longer a member of this family. No support, no contact, nothing. My mother gasped. Richard, surely. No, he interrupted. I'm done watching our daughter throw away everything we've built. It's us or them, Melanie. Your real family or those art people who've corrupted you. I looked to James, who stared at his plate. Then to my mother, who dabbed at her eyes with a napkin but said nothing to contradict my father. Finally to Kathleen, whose wide eyes were filled with tears she was desperately trying to hold back. This isn't love, I said, my voice breaking. Love doesn't come with these kinds of conditions. I stood up, legs shaking. I choose me. I choose my future. That night, I packed my childhood belongings into 2 suitcases, leaving behind anything I couldn't carry. My mother hovered in the doorway of my bedroom, occasionally making weak attempts to convince me to reconsider. Your father will calm down, she said. Just give him time. Will he? I asked. Or will he just find new ultimatums every time I make a choice he doesn't approve of? She had no answer. As I zipped my final suitcase, Kathleen slipped into my room and closed the door. Please don't go like this, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Can't you just say you'll think about moving back, even if you don't mean it? I hugged my sister tightly. I can't start my adult life with a lie, Kath. That would poison everything. I wish I were brave like you, she said. You are brave, I told her. And when it's your turn to make your own choices, it'll be there for you, whatever you decide. I pressed my extra phone charger and a small sketchbook into her hands. Hide these. Call me from school anytime. As I carried my bags downstairs, my father stood at the bottom, arms crossed. I hope you understand what you're throwing away, he said. I understand exactly what I'm choosing, I replied. James watched from the living room doorway, shaking his head in disapproval. My mother sobbed quietly in the kitchen, unable to look at me. Only Kathleen followed me to my car, helping me load my bags. This isn't forever, she whispered as we hugged goodbye. We'll find a way back to each other. I drove away from my childhood home at midnight, tears blurring the road ahead. In my rearview mirror, I could see Kathleen standing alone in the driveway, a diminishing figure in the darkness. I had no way of knowing then that it would be 8 long years before I would hear from my family again. The tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn was nothing like the spacious bedroom I grew up in. At 400 square feet, with a kitchenette barely large enough to turn around in it, consumed most of my entry-level salary. But it was mine free from judgment and conditions. Those first months were brutal. I worked 60-hour weeks at the design agency, taking on every project offered to prove my worth. When I wasn't working, I was alone. The silence of my apartment a stark contrast to the bustling city outside. I called Kathleen twice, but both times she sounded nervous, rushing off the phone and promising to call back when she never did. Eventually, her number was disconnected. 3 months in, I developed a persistent cold that wouldn't go away. Without health insurance, I ignored it until a high fever sent me to an urgent care center where the bill nearly wiped out my meager savings. The nurse practitioner who treated me looked concerned when I admitted I had no emergency contacts in the city. "Everyone needs somebody," she said, scribbling something on my discharge papers. It was the number for a young professionals community group. My daughter found her people there when she first moved to New York. I was too exhausted to explain that I'd chosen to leave my people behind, or more accurately, they'd chosen to let me go. The turning point came when the agency hired another junior designer, Zoe, and we were assigned to share the small office in the back. With bright pink hair and arms covered in colorful tattoos, she was exactly the type of person my parents would have warned me against. She was also extraordinarily talented and genuinely kind. "You look like you haven't had a real meal in weeks," she said on our 3rd day working together. "Come over for dinner tonight. My roommate always cooks too much anyway." I almost declined, but realized I had no good reason to. That night in Zoe's cluttered but welcoming apartment, surrounded by her roommates and their friends, I experienced my first sense of belonging since leaving school. "So, what's your story?" asked Marco, an illustrator who lived across the hall. "You have that look." "What look?" I asked, defensive. "The one that says you're carrying something heavy. Most of us here know that look well." Over homemade pasta and cheap wine, I shared the condensed version of my family situation. Instead of pity or awkward silence, I received nods of recognition. "My parents didn't speak to me for 2 years after I came out," said Marco. "My dad cut me off when I dropped out of law school to pursue art," added Aaliyah, a ceramic artist. "Family is who shows up," Zoe said simply. "Sometimes that's the one you were born into. Sometimes it's the one you find." That night was the beginning of my chosen family. When my lease ended 2 months later, I moved into the spare room in Zoe's apartment, cutting my rent enough to start building savings again. She taught me how to navigate sample sales and thrift stores to build a professional wardrobe on a budget. I helped her prepare for client presentations, an area where she felt insecure. My career began to gain traction. By my 2nd year at the agency, I was taking lead on smaller accounts and receiving mentorship from the creative director. When I designed a campaign that won an industry award, my colleagues took me out to celebrate. The empty chair, where family should have been, still hurt, but the pain was dulled by the genuine support surrounding me. 4 years after leaving home, I received a Facebook message from Kathleen, her first contact since a brief text when she left for college. She was getting married and wanted me to know, though she understood if I couldn't attend, given the circumstances. "Dad says you're not welcome at the ceremony," she wrote, "but I wanted to tell you anyway. I miss you." I sent her a handmade card and a check I could barely afford, knowing I would never see her in her wedding dress. The photos she sent afterward showed my parents beaming beside her, James and his wife with their toddler, and the conspicuous absence where I should have stood as her sister. That same year, I started therapy with Dr. Winters, a gentle but forthright woman who specialized in family trauma. Our first session, I spent 30 minutes insisting I was fine, completely over my family situation. "If you're over it," she said, "why do you keep their picture on your nightstand?" It was a fair question I couldn't answer. Over months of weekly sessions, I unpacked the complex grief of family estrangement. Unlike death, there was no closure, no socially recognized process for mourning people who were still alive, but chose to be absent. "You're allowed to miss them and be angry at them simultaneously," Dr. Winters assured me. "And you're allowed to build a beautiful life without them." I threw myself into that life building with determination. At work, I was promoted to senior designer, then art director, by my 6th year in New York. I moved to a better apartment in a neighborhood I once couldn't have afforded. I developed friendships that evolved into deep bonds of mutual care. When my grandmother died during my 5th year of estrangement, I learned about it through an obituary a former neighbor shared on Facebook. I sent flowers to the funeral home with a card simply signed with my name. No one acknowledged them or reached out. Shortly after, I met Jordan at an industry event. Unlike Sam from college, Jordan had also experienced family rejection after leaving their small hometown to pursue a career in photography. Our shared understanding of that particular pain created an immediate connection. "The holidays are always the hardest," Jordan said on our 3rd date, which happened to fall in December. "My parents used to go all out for Christmas." "Mine too," I admitted. "Sometimes I still buy the same cinnamon candles my mom used to burn just to remember." Together, we created new traditions. Christmas morning hikes in Central Park, followed by dinner with our motley crew of similar orphans by choice or circumstance. Thanksgiving potlucks, where everyone contributed a dish from their family heritage. We built celebrations around the people who chose to love us consistently. Through therapy and these new connections, I slowly developed a sense of self that wasn't defined by my family's rejection. I recognized my resilience, my capacity for joy despite loss, and my ability to create meaningful connections. The ache never fully disappeared, but it transformed from a gaping wound to a tender scar, a part of me, but no longer debilitating. That hard-won peace made the email that arrived on an ordinary Tuesday in my 8th year of estrangement all the more destabilizing. From my mother's long-unused address with the subject line, "Christmas Invitation." Its arrival shattered the carefully constructed equilibrium of my new life, forcing me to confront what I thought I'd finally put behind me. The email notification popped up while I was in the middle of a client presentation. I ignored it, initially focused on explaining the concept board for a major campaign. It wasn't until hours later, back at my desk, that I opened my personal email and saw the sender name, Sandra Williams, my mother. My coffee mug slipped from my hand, splattering lukewarm liquid across my desk. With shaking fingers, I clicked open the message. "Dearest Melanie." It began a formality that felt jarring after 8 years of silence. "We would like to invite you to join us for Christmas this year. Your presence has been missed at family gatherings, and we feel it is time to reunite. Please let us know if you can attend. Love, Mom." No acknowledgement of the estrangement, no mention of my father's ultimatum or the years of absence. Just a casual invitation, as if I'd been away at college rather than explicitly disowned. I read it 7 times, analyzing every word choice. The use of "we" rather than "I." The vague "it is time" with no explanation of why now. The closing "Love, Mom" that made my chest tight with complicated emotions. I closed my laptop without responding and tried to focus on work, but my concentration was shattered. By evening, I had drafted and deleted 15 different responses, ranging from coldly polite acceptance to rage-filled rejection. Back at my apartment, I showed the email to Jordan, who read it with a furrowed brow. "That's bizarre," they said. "Like there's a glitch in the matrix and the last 8 years didn't happen." "Exactly," I agreed. "I don't know if this is an olive branch or just more manipulation." "What do you want to do?" Jordan asked, pulling me close on the couch. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to ignore it completely. Another part is curious. And a small, stupid part still wants my family's approval, even after everything." "That's not stupid," Jordan said softly. "It's human." My phone rang at 11 that night, an unknown number with my hometown area code. I answered cautiously. Mel, it's Kathleen. My sister's voice, deeper and more confident than I remembered, brought instant tears. Kath, I breathed. Is everything okay? Depends on your definition of okay, she said with a bitter laugh. I saw Mom composing that email to you. I thought you might want some background before you decide anything. She explained that our father had suffered a heart attack 3 months prior. Not severe enough to be life-threatening, but significant enough to shake his sense of mortality. Around the same time, James' marriage had imploded in a messy divorce that was scandalizing their church community. And Mom joined this new spiritual renewal group at church with a pastor who's big on family reconciliation, Kathleen continued. Suddenly, she's talking about healing and forgiveness, but honestly, Mel, I don't think anything has really changed. What do you mean? I asked. I mean, Dad hasn't said he was wrong, just that he's getting older and wants all his children around. Mom talks about you like you went away for a while, not like they literally disowned you. And James blames you for breaking up the family anytime your name comes up. I processed this information, feeling the familiar disappointment settle in my stomach. So why reach out now? The new pastor is doing this big Christmas service about the prodigal son. I think Mom wants you home as proof of their spiritual growth or something, Kathleen said. I'm sorry that sounds awful. No, I appreciate the honesty. For what it's worth, Kathleen added, I've missed you every single day. I have a spare room if you do decide to come, but don't want to stay at the house. After we hung up, I called Zoe, whose advice had guided me through many crises over the years. Go, she said immediately. Not for them, but for yourself. You need to see them as they are now, not as the giants they were in your memory. My therapist had a more measured response during our emergency session the next day. What are your expectations if you go? Dr. Winters asked. What would make the trip worthwhile regardless of their behavior? I thought about it. Closure, maybe? Or at least the chance to engage with them as the adult I've become, not the scared girl who drove away that night. Those are valid reasons. She nodded. Just remember that you can't control how they'll respond, only how you choose to show up. Jordan was more protective. I don't want to see you hurt again. These people discarded you once. What prevents them from doing it twice? I'm stronger now, I said, though uncertainty crept through me. And this time, I have a life to come back to people who love me unconditionally. Over the next week, I fielded opinions from everyone in my circle. My boss encouraged a brief visit with clear boundaries. My friend Aaliyah suggested writing a letter instead. Marco offered to pose as my fiancé for moral support, which made me laugh despite my anxiety. In quiet moments alone, I examined my heart. The truth was, despite years of therapy and growth, part of me still longed for resolution. Not to return to the fold, but to face my past with the strength of my present self. After 10 days of deliberation, I composed a careful response to my mother. Thank you for the invitation. I can visit from December 23rd to 26th, though I will be staying at a hotel. Looking forward to seeing everyone. Melanie. Brief, non-committal, and with clear boundaries. I booked a refundable flight, reserved a hotel room, and requested time off work. With each practical step, the abstract idea of seeing my family again became terrifyingly concrete. As December approached, my anxiety intensified. I had stress dreams where I arrived at my parents' house to find it empty, or where they didn't recognize me at all. During the day, I obsessively planned my wardrobe, wanting to project confidence and success, without seeming like I was trying too hard. Just be yourself, Jordan said, watching me reject another outfit. The self they rejected is amazing. The night before my flight, I barely slept. Jordan drove me to the airport at dawn, holding my hand until the security checkpoint. Call me anytime, they said, day or night, and remember, you can leave whenever you want. You're not trapped there anymore. As the plane took off, I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. I was no longer the heartbroken 22-year-old fleeing her childhood home. I was 32, accomplished, loved, and most importantly, free to define family on my own terms. Whatever happened in the next few days, I would return to the life I'd built, strengthened by the knowledge that I had faced my deepest fears. The familiar landscape of my hometown emerged through the rental car window as I drove from the airport. The same Walmart supercenter where we used to shop for school supplies. The high school with its new addition. The church where my family still attended services every Sunday. Each landmark carried memories, but they felt distant now, like scenes from someone else's life. I checked into my hotel, a new chain establishment that hadn't existed when I lived here. The anonymity of the standard room was comforting, a neutral territory where I could retreat if necessary. I changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a simple sweater, professional, but not trying too hard. My success would speak for itself without flashy displays. The GPS guided me through once familiar streets to the house where I grew up. Christmas lights outlined the roof and windows, the same pattern my father had installed year after year. A wreath hung on the front door. Nothing had changed yet. Everything had. I sat in the car for 10 minutes, gathering courage. Finally, I grabbed the gift bags containing carefully selected presents and approached the door. Before I could knock, it swung open. My mother stood there, her hair now more gray than brown lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 8 years ago. We stared at each other for a long moment before she lunged forward and wrapped me in a tight hug that smelled of the same perfume she'd worn throughout my childhood. "You're here," she whispered. "You really came." I patted her back awkwardly, unsure how to respond to this affection after years of absence. Over her shoulder, I saw my father in the hallway, watching with an unreadable expression. He looked smaller, somehow, less imposing than in my memories. "Hello, Melanie," he said formally when my mother finally released me. He didn't move to hug me, offering a handshake instead. "Thank you for coming." The stilted greeting confirmed what Kathleen had said. There had been no great epiphany, no sudden understanding of the pain they'd caused. Just age and circumstance making them reconsider the bridges they'd burned. James and his 2 children arrived shortly after me. My brother had gained weight and lost some hair, but his expression of disapproval remained exactly the same. He introduced his children, a boy and girl, aged 5 and 3, with obvious reluctance. "This is your Aunt Melanie," he told them. "She lives in New York." The children regarded me with confusion. "But you said we didn't have another aunt," his daughter said innocently. An uncomfortable silence fell before my mother jumped in brightly. "Who wants hot chocolate? I made it special with peppermint sticks." Kathleen arrived last, rushing through the door with an armful of presents. She had grown into a beautiful woman of 25, confident in ways she hadn't been as a teenager. She embraced me without hesitation. "I'm so glad you're here," she whispered. "Whatever happens, this matters." The afternoon progressed with strained small talk. My mother fluttered around serving snacks and directing conversation towards safe topics like the weather and the children's school activities. My father asked surface-level questions about New York but changed the subject when I mentioned my career accomplishments. James barely spoke to me at all, focusing entirely on his children. "We maintained your room exactly as you left it," my mother announced as she led me upstairs before dinner. "I always hoped you'd come back." The preserved shrine to my 18-year-old self was jarring. Faded posters on the walls, the twin bed with its floral comforter, bookshelves with high school textbooks. Nothing acknowledging the adult I'd become or the years that had passed. "You know I'm not moving back, right?" I said gently. "I'm just visiting." Her smile faltered. "Of course, dear. I just thought you'd want to see it." Dinner was a traditional Williams family Christmas Eve meal, complete with my mother's famous pot roast and my father's annual reading of the Nativity story. The familiar ritual felt like watching a play I'd once performed in, but now observed from the audience. The tension that had simmered all day finally broke during dessert. My father cleared his throat and raised his glass in a toast. "To family reunited," he said, "and to the return of our prodigal daughter who has finally found her way back to where she belongs." The word prodigal hit me like a slap. In that moment, I understood completely what this invitation was about. Not reconciliation between equals, but my supposed redemption and return to their fold. "I'm not back," I said quietly. "And I'm not prodigal. I didn't squander anything or make poor choices. I built a successful life doing what I love." My father lowered his glass. "Melanie, let's not start this again. Can't we just enjoy having everyone together?" "Together on what terms?" I asked. "Pretending the last 8 years didn't happen? Pretending you didn't disown me for choosing my own path?" "You chose to leave," James interjected. "You abandoned this family." "No," I said firmly. "I was given an ultimatum. Either surrender my dreams and independence or lose my family." "What kind of choice is that?" My mother began to cry softly. "We just wanted what was best for you." "You wanted what was comfortable for you," I corrected. "There's a difference." "This is exactly why we don't discuss Melanie," James said to my father as if I wasn't sitting right there. "Always making everything about her causing drama." "I'm not causing drama," I said, my voice rising slightly despite my best efforts. "I'm asking for acknowledgement of what actually happened. Dad told me if I returned to New York, I was no longer part of this family. You all stood by and let that happen. 8 years with no contact, no support, nothing. And now you're acting like I just went away for school." The table fell silent, except for my mother's sniffling. Finally, my father spoke. "I was angry," he admitted. "Perhaps I spoke harshly that night." It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest thing to acknowledgement I'd received. "I was hurt," I replied, "and I still am. But I'm also not the same person who drove away that night. I'm stronger now, and I know what real love looks like." Kathleen reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Tell us about your life in New York," she said. "I want to know everything." For the first time that day, I spoke freely about my career, my friends, my accomplishments. Kathleen asked thoughtful questions. My mother listened with tears still in her eyes. My father remained stone-faced, but didn't interrupt. James occupied his children with dessert, pointedly not engaging. "Would you be willing to take a family photo tomorrow?" my mother asked when I finished. "It's been so long since we've had a complete one." A complete family photo wouldn't erase 8 years of absence, but I nodded. "Yes, I can do that." That night in my hotel room, I called Jordan and recounted the day's events. "How are you feeling?" they asked. "Exhausted, sad, a little relieved," I said. "They haven't really changed, but somehow that makes it easier. I don't have to wonder anymore if I missed out on some perfect family reconciliation." "Are you going back tomorrow?" "Yes," I decided, "but on my terms. Not as the prodigal daughter, but as Melanie, who has built a life she loves and is extending an olive branch despite everything." Christmas Day brought more structured activities that limited the potential for deep conversation. Gift exchange where I received generic presents that showed no knowledge of my current tastes or interests. Christmas dinner with more relatives who regarded me with curious glances. The family photo where we all smiled stiffly for the camera, a facade of unity. As I prepared to leave the following morning, my father awkwardly handed me an envelope. "Your mother and I thought you might need this," he said. Inside was a check for a substantial amount. I handed it back immediately. "I don't need money," I said. I need respect for the choices I've made and the person I've become. He looked genuinely surprised. You're really doing well in New York with that art job. Yes, I said. I'm an art director at a top agency. I have a beautiful apartment, good friends, a partner who loves me unconditionally. He nodded slowly. That good. I wouldn't have expected that. It wasn't a full reconciliation, not even close. But in his acknowledgement of my success on my own terms, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of mutual respect. My mother cried again as we said goodbye, extracting a promise to stay in touch. Kathleen hugged me fiercely and confirmed her plans to visit me in New York. James managed a curt nod, which was more than I'd expected. As I drove away from my childhood home for the second time, the weight on my chest was lighter than before. Not because everything was resolved, but because I'd faced my past without losing myself in it. The return flight to New York felt symbolic, a physical manifestation of my journey forward rather than backward. Jordan met me at the airport with a handmade sign reading "Welcome Home," decorated with glitter stars. The sight brought unexpected tears to my eyes. This is home, I said as we embraced, with people who choose me every day. In the days that followed, I processed the visit through conversations with Dr. Winters. I went seeking resolution, I told her, but I realized that's not something anyone can give me except myself. What does resolution look like for you? She asked. Acceptance, I said after careful thought. Not of their conditions or their version of events, but of the reality that they are who they are. I can't change them. I can only decide how I engage with them going forward. The experience had shifted something fundamental within me. The fantasy of perfect reconciliation had dissolved, replaced by the more complex reality that relationships with difficult family members require ongoing navigation rather than singular moments of closure. A week after my return, I received an email from my mother. Unlike her Christmas invitation, this one acknowledged some of what had happened. I know things haven't been easy between us, she wrote. Your father has his pride and struggles to admit when he's wrong, but seeing you as the accomplished woman you've become has affected him more than hell say. We've missed so much of your life. If you're willing, I'd like to try to know the person you are now. I shared the email with Jordan, who approached it with cautious optimism. Small steps, they said. On your terms. My reply was thoughtful but boundaried. I'm open to building a new relationship, I wrote. But it needs to be based on mutual respect. I'm not looking to return to the past or to pretend it didn't happen. I'm interested in getting to know each other as the adults we are now. Kathleen followed through on her promise to visit in February. Showing her my New York life was like witnessing it through fresh eyes. My apartment that I decorated with care. My office where my name was on the door. The community of friends who'd become family. You really built all this yourself, she marveled during dinner with Zoe and Marco. I'm so proud of you, Mel. Not entirely by myself, I corrected, looking around the table at my chosen family. No one does it entirely alone. That spring brought unexpected developments. My mother's emails became more regular and increasingly genuine. My father, while not directly communicative, began to express interest through questions relayed by my mother. Even James sent a stiff but civil birthday card. Do you think you'll ever fully reconcile with them? Jordan asked one evening as we walked through Central Park, the place where we'd spent our first Christmas together. I don't know, I admitted. I think reconciliation is the wrong word. We're building something new, something that honors who we all are now, rather than trying to recapture what was lost. In April, I received the job offer from one of the top agencies in the country, with a substantial salary increase and creative control I'd only dreamed about. When I called my mother to share the news, her excitement seemed genuine. Your father and I were talking, she said tentatively. We'd like to visit New York, see where you live, meet your friends, if that's something you'd be comfortable with. The suggestion of my parents in my carefully constructed safe space was momentarily jarring. But I recognized it for what it was, a gesture toward meeting me where I was, rather than expecting me to come to them. "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. Jordan proposed the following week under the cherry blossoms in the park. As we celebrated with our friends, I found myself reflecting on the meaning of family. The one that raised me had given me roots, however complicated. The one I chose gave me wings and unconditional support. Perhaps there was room in my life for both on terms that preserved my hard-won peace and independence. My new project at work involved creating a campaign about modern families in all their diverse forms. As I developed the concept, I infused it with my own experience, the messiness, the boundaries, the chosen connections that sustain us when biological ones falter. "This is your best work yet," my creative director said during the final presentation. "It feels authentic and deeply human." Because it was. Every painful moment of rejection, every joyful discovery of chosen family, every complicated step toward building new relationships with my parents, all of it had shaped not just my personal journey, but my creative voice as well. 8 years of estrangement had taught me that family isn't defined by blood alone, but by consistent care and respect. The Christmas invitation hadn't magically healed old wounds, but it had opened a door to something new, something based not on obligation or control, but on the adults we'd all become. As Jordan and I began planning our wedding, we discussed the guest list over dinner one night. "Will you invite them?" they asked gently. I considered the question carefully. "Yes," I decided. Not because I'm seeking their approval, but because they are part of my story. And because this celebration is about the family we've created, the one based on choice rather than chance. The journey from disownment to self-ownership had been long and painful, but standing in my truth had led me to genuine love, meaningful work, and a sense of belonging I never could have found by surrendering my autonomy. Whatever relationship evolved with my biological family going forward would be enhanced by this foundation, not diminished by it. Have you ever had to rebuild a relationship after significant damage or distance? Share your experience in the comments. How did you navigate establishing new boundaries while opening yourself to connection? If you found value in my story, please like and subscribe for more authentic conversations about family dynamics, healing, and creating meaningful connections on your own terms. Remember that family is who shows up for you consistently with love and respect, whether they're related by blood or by choice. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and I wish you strength in writing your own story of healing and growth.